I'm joined by Steve now from MTC, who is the Chief Engineer, to tell us a little bit about what they've been up to and some of their latest innovations. Steve, thanks for joining me.
Oh, you're welcome, no problem. So the MTC, the Manufacturing Technology Centre, we're part of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult. Now, the Catapult Collective in the UK is about making sure that innovations created in the UK are landed in the UK and that we exploit that intellectual property and that knowledge and gain economically out of that. Now, part of our remit is about how do we develop manufacturing methods, processes for multiple sectors, and we operate in literally every industrial sector you could think of. Now, the relevance for us today is that construction's going through this massive transformational program. It's starting to look towards MMC or OAC, depending on your parlance, but off-site manufacturing in essence, a manufacturing-based approach towards construction. So we've got a huge array of capabilities, knowledge and competency that's been built up across multiple industry sectors that we can help redeploy and develop as solutions for the construction sector, all of which will contribute to that big transformational piece about how do we migrate away from traditional construction approach to something with a manufacturing base, how we can develop the methods for creating products in a more robust, repeatable manner, and with that we can have far greater control over delivery time, over costs, and all the other consequential benefits like embodied carbon and so forth. And once we help nurture and catalyse that migration with industry partners in the supply chain, we can help the UK then fulfil its desires and objectives to build more, to build back greener, to build better, but also to look at the remediation, reparation, renovation side of things too, about how do we take care of the existing built environment. Now, a manufacturing-based approach, we believe, is quintessential to that because it gives us this latitude for all of these controls, if you like, so that we've got a far better capability to orchestrate and dictate our future, whereas traditional construction is open to so many independent variables that we can't control, such as weather and volatility of materials prices and imports and so forth, where manufacturing will help us to mitigate a huge number of those. So what we do is very much about enabling the sector to help in its transformational journey. The reason why we're here is that the MTC was the lead partner in the Construction Innovation Hub, which was a very large-scale program funded under the Transforming Construction Challenge program through Innovate UK. And as such, we're here to help disseminate the knowledge, transfer the technology and the learning to as many industry partners as we can.
Wow, is all I can say to that. So there we are, a very simple, and I can only imagine that's actually quite a concise explanation of what you do at MTC. It seems like, yeah, absolutely.
I could go on all day, literally.
Oh, but that's why you're here, right?
Yes.
So I just want to pick up on a couple of things you mentioned there. Now, we have heard, whether that be on the news or through whatever, the sentence, build better, build back better. Actually, it is a real concern. And moving forward, we've got new regulations coming in or have come into play. So actually, making sure that we do hit those targets must be a real key concern for some of your clients. How are you finding sort of this transition?
Oh, no, that's a really good question. If we look at the key performance indicators that the government set for the construction sector around improving productivity, faster delivery, reducing embodied carbon, improved costs, in addressing imbalance of trade, I think we're making great headway in 3 of those. But the areas of embodied carbon and reducing the imbalance of trade are not being addressed head on just yet. Now, the migration towards a manufacturing-based approach, all of this is a part of the foundation, to use a construction analogy, the building blocks to enable the industry to get to a position where it will have far greater control over its future, and then we can start to look at innovations that will help us to close the gap on those other metrics, as it were. So embodied carbon will probably mean that we need to be looking at mechanisms to migrate away from traditional construction materials, which have a high energy intensity in their production, such as cement. And by creating these innovations in the UK and landing them in the UK industry sectors, we can start to look at exports as a mechanism to address the imbalance of trade.
Okay, so yeah, a lot going on, which is That's all right. That's super interesting, and especially, you mentioned about things, sustainability, carbon neutral, net zero. We're obviously all aiming towards as well. Although you did mention that we're potentially not hit it, or we're not focusing on it head on like we should be just yet. Do you see that there is a lean and a trend in the industry sort of towards those key concerns?
Very much so. I think it's on the forefront of most people's agendas. So when they look at new delivery programs, new construction projects, they are cognizant, far more cognizant now than they've ever been about the embodied carbon and the carbon footprint of the materials supply chain. Now, an awful lot of this is going to be we will have great constraints in the near term in terms of the embodied carbon and the carbon footprint of materials because of this hefty reliance on imports. So until we get to a point where we can mitigate the number of imports, or we're much more adept at using the materials that we've got here in the UK, including reprocessing materials that have come from prior construction projects, from demolition and the like, and having a circular economy aspect, that's where we need to start making the most traction in the near term. And then innovative new materials like organic fibrous materials to displace things like cements, that will be a much longer term prospect. But the catalysis for that is already happening in the UK. We've got great academic research in all of those avenues. So the future is great for the construction sector. It is massive. It's a major component of the UK economy. And it just needs a bit of nurturing, a bit of support, and it will run and flourish as a result of that. That's kind of what we do.
Yeah, and I mean, it must be so exciting as well to be at the start of this process. Or I say at the start, it's I know it's your expertise, but to be able to see into the future and go, look, this is what we're aiming for, and to be able to take people on that journey must be quite exciting.
Oh, very much so, yes. I mean, personally speaking, I'm from more of a manufacturing background. My involvement in construction is pretty much the last 2.5, 3 years. But it's been an amazing journey for me personally. At first, it was a very daunting prospect because I'm looking at construction products and construction methods and saying, I don't know anything about this, why am I here, kind of thing. But once you get into it and realise that it is just very similar to any other manufacturing-based sector, it's a suite of processes, it's a suite of methods, different group of materials, but the fundamental principles are the same. And the opportunities for having an impact and contributing to a significant change in, shall we say, overarching performance of the sector, it's what gets me out of bed every morning. It is just so exciting, this period in construction. We've got the opportunity to make a long-term impactful change that our children and our grandchildren will benefit from. And that's a personal motivation, so it couldn't be any better.
And it's so lovely. You can tell how passionate about it you are as well, which is just so delightful. I'm not going to keep you much longer, I promise. But just a couple of questions. Going back to TC then, as a company, is there anything that you're working on? I know we've got a couple of things going on here. Anything at the moment that you want to just talk about that you're here highlighting and showcasing?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So the diorama that we've got on the stand here represents the journey through the adoption of technology in a construction setting. So looking from very much traditional construction approach at the far end, where it's mostly labour intensive, an awful lot of the actual work, the activity is concluded on site, on the building itself, piece by piece as it were. But through the adoption of technologies and migration to a manufacturing based approach, where a lot of the product that constitutes a building is created in a factory environment, and then you have different methods for integrating those on site. This is explicitly what we're doing. So we've got all of that kind of methods development, the fundamental principles of how you define, specify and develop those solutions, and how you ensure that you've got a quality of outcome is what we do. And that's what we're doing with the Construction Innovation Hub activities. To help industry in that journey, we've come up with a capability for modern construction framework, which is a method of an organisation being able to self-assess, to measure where they are on the journey of adopting modern methods of construction or manufacturing-based approach. And that will help inform them about where the nature of their ambitions are and what's the gap that needs to be closed. So where are the areas of capability development that are required? Those capabilities aren't just people, it's sort of equipment, assets, those kind of capabilities, but also some of the enabling capabilities in the organisation, like digital tools and processes and the like. And it will help inform them on what needs to be done. We're more than happy to assist their journey, but the first step in any journey is self-awareness.
Oh, honestly, Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And last question for you, before I let you go and get on with business. Why is it important then that you're here at UK Construction Week?
So UK Construction Week represents the best forum for gaining, shall we say, access to the broad fraternity of stakeholders in the construction sector, from client departments through key industry representative bodies, design consultancies, prime contractors, the supply chain, and providers of enabling technologies like software tools and the like. So it's a really, really important event for us to be present at, to attend as a delegate as well as to be an exhibitor, and to support some of the presentations and workshops too.
Steve, thank you so much. We are going to have to wrap up now, as much as I could sit and talk to you all day about this. Sorry, I kept you for ages. We have got a talk going on behind us, but please come down and have a chat with Steve, learn more about some of the wonderful work that they are doing at MTC.